Rudy's Revelation.
Go ahead.
Hey everyone, it is April 24th, Friday. Happy Friday. Top stories today. Looks like peace talks are back on. Iran, a delegation is heading to Pakistan. I'm just going to dive a little bit deeper in the SPLC crimes, and that they're the tip of the iceberg in the fact that the Southern Poverty Law Center is a significant cog in a false narrative machine used to demonize particularly white Americans, or the majority of the population as we see it so far. Have 38 headlines to get to today, so let's read the news. We're going to start with Axios. Iran deploys more mines in the Strait of Hormuz, sources say. What we got going on here is what I reported yesterday already. I led with yesterday, but I just want to make sure that now everybody knows that Iran is deploying more mines. It was unclear whether they had any mines in the Hormuz Strait or in the Persian Gulf at all, any ones that could be seen. They also have these mines that stay at the bottom of the ocean, and then when they detect the ship, they rise up. But they are deploying more mines, so they're making it more difficult. They're trying to use all the cards they can going into negotiations. The blockade is working. So if anybody doesn't think that this puts Iran in an even tighter spot, it certainly does economically. And militarily, they're pretty much defeated. They only have a couple things to do, but the blockade is a good counter for Iran closing the strait. Just the news, Pentagon rejects report clearing Strait of Hormuz would take 6 months. Talking about the mines here, the Pentagon on Thursday rejected a report from the Washington Post, that's the CIA, that indicated it would take 6 months to clear the Strait of Hormuz of mines. The U.S. Navy has worked to remove mines from the critical waterway amid the ongoing ceasefire between Washington and Tehran. While maintaining a blockade of the strait, Pentagon spokesman Sean Parnell criticized the Post report, telling News Nation that it was cherry-picking leaked information, much of which was false. Just like the Washington Post will do, the CIA will, of course, work against the United States. Like I said, the intelligence agencies actually work for rich individuals and corporations, not the countries they supposedly work for. And so if the plan is to undermine the United States, of course, the CIA will do that. And this the propaganda piece, this is meant to encroach on the midterms here with any fallout from Iran, which Trump is going to close up in the next month or two. He's not going to allow this to go into the midterms. I think Trump's a little bit too smart for that. And believe you me, I am not a sycophant as far as Trump is concerned. I mean, I think he's got some good policy, a lot of which he kind of walked into. And a lot of stuff he's doing is very good. So one policy decision to go to war obviously is an important one, but you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. All right, moving on. Next article up here, article number 3 from Fox News. U.S. economic chokehold on Iran reaches peak leverage as collapse risks emerge. Miad Maleki estimates current conditions are costing Iran $435 million a day combined economic damage. That is through, obviously, the military strikes, but mostly because of oil exports. And there have been sanctions on Iran for some time now, and a lot of how Iran sells oil is through shadow fleets of tankers, which are, basically they're selling oil illicitly. Or I should say that there are countries that are buying Iranian oil illicitly at a discount. Article number 4, Zero Hedge against U.S. dominance, Europe's Hormuz mission, and the illusion of geopolitical power. What are they talking about? Well, if you hadn't heard, 50 additional states, according to the initiators of this rather peculiar political camouflage, are expected to join the European alliance. Leadership claims are naturally being made by the former maritime powers of Britain and France, above all France, whose aircraft carrier Charles de Gaulle may stand as the last remaining symbol of Europe's great naval tradition. At the center of these activities is, if one can even approach, the Persian Gulf at all. So there is some rattling within the European Union about, we're going to, come to the aid of the United States or help the United States open the Hormuz Strait. Nothing's been promised yet, and, building an alliance over time, we don't have that sort of time. So what the United States asked for was Britain's mine sweeping ships. They didn't want to do that. And now they're going to have some sort of show of force on what that's going to look like and whether or not that's going to open up the strait. If the European Union did come on this down on the side of the United States, this probably would be over already. But that's what makes it very strange for me, is why would Europe prolong this thing by being indecisive of where your stance should be? It certainly should be with the United States, and it's because most of the Iranian threat targets Europe for the most part. Story number 5, Iranian parliament speaker quits negotiating team. This is just the news. Now, this is important because it seems like this guy wasn't in lockstep with the IRGC, and he stepped down because how can you negotiate if the IRGC doesn't want to negotiate? So I guess he quit, but there's a new delegation on the way down there. Going back to this story, though, it says in the lead, Iranian parliament speaker Mohammad Bahir Ghalibaf has reportedly left the country's negotiating team as Iran and Washington struggled to reach an agreement to end the Iran war. And here you go, the New York Post. Iran delegation heading to Pakistan as ceasefire talks with the U.S. hang in the balance. The funny thing is that the Iran war is effectively over. This isn't a war. People, they don't seem to understand this attack by the United States and Israel, this operation, is over. It can continue, but it's not really a war, because how is Iran fighting the war? They're not fighting the war. They're striking out at civilian targets. That's terrorism. So they're not really fighting a war. It's not really a war. It was an attack by the United States on Israel, on Iran, and they just refused to capitulate, which is up to them. But this is all about making sure that they don't secure a nuclear weapon, and that means that they have to give up their fissile material, or at the very least stop enriching. Getting back to this New York Post article, senior Iran leadership will come to Pakistan Friday or Saturday as the world watches and waits for Tehran to agree to a second round of peace talks with the U.S., Iranian and Pakistani government sources told the Post. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi will lead a small delegation to Islamabad, which is set to arrive around 10 p.m. local time. It was not immediately clear whether the trip indicates a second round of talks is imminent, but Pakistani sources told the Post it is likely. And I hope so, because there's no way we're going to send in ground troops to secure nuclear material. Could happen, might happen. I don't think that's the U.S.'s responsibility. I think that's Israeli responsibility. Just the news, story number 7. Trump orders U.S. minesweepers to triple operations in the Strait of Hormuz. President Donald Trump on Thursday announced that he had ordered an increase in U.S. minesweeper activities in the Strait of Hormuz and that the U.S. Navy would immediately fire on any ship that planted new mines in the critical waterway. Good. I mean, they should have been doing this. And then this was my question is, how come American aircraft can't be patrolling the Persian Gulf, right, during a cessation of the operation, whether it's a C-130, you know, with their, I think it's a 50 millimeter cannon. Good thing to figure out. Because that would be good use because it could stay in the air longer. But also patrolling Warthogs or Apache helicopters or so forth and so on. So if they see these little Iranian boats, because you could see it on the satellite tracker, you could see the little green, the big boats are red and the little boats are green. And you could see from the Iranian islands there in the Strait of Hormuz, these little green blips ferrying back and forth across the strait. So if a satellite could see it, I mean, obviously you could warn aircraft, and you could probably get aircraft in the air above the Persian Gulf in time to intercept. But these fast speedboats, that's what they do. They go out really fast. They complete their mission and come back. And by the time air assets get into the area, they've already retreated back to their ports. Also, adding to the complexity here, this is the National Review. Turkey is the weak link in Trump's economic war on Iran. Military blockade in place in the Strait of Hormuz. The Trump administration is pivoting toward economic warfare against the Islamic Republic. The Treasury Department has provided the United Arab Emirates and Oman with a list of banks and their jurisdictions that enable Iranian illicit activity. This early warning extended to China and Hong Kong is intended to make clear that any financial support for Iran will trigger U.S. repercussions. The key challenge is inconsistent enforcement, particularly regarding Turkey. Turkey has a very non-existent regulatory commercial environment. So businesses that are not aligned with the state of Turkey can truck in stuff to Iran. So that's not what they're trucking in. Who knows? The main concentration here, as it always has been, and since this started, is whether or not China is able to send sophisticated military technology, mostly missiles, advanced missile systems, to Iran. Just the News has the article. Number 9 here, dueling blockades. Trump orders Navy to shoot ships laying mines while Iran storms cargo ships. Yeah, with the little speedboats. Like I said, I don't understand. Now it's referred to as the Mosquito Fleet, that how the U.S. military can counter this so-called Mosquito Fleet. One thing that has to be considered here is Saudi Arabia I thought was in on this. Why can't Saudi Arabia fly missions to repel these small boats? Just an idea. So I want to move to the second story here, which is still at the forefront. And as I stated previously, we've known this for many, many years. Throw some more money in the Alex Jones jar. Alex Jones was right jar. Because we've known this for over a decade, possibly even into 2 decades here. but really a decade, because it was really 2000. Everything seemed to turn in 2012. Nobody could really explain why that is. I thought it was because of CRISPR, the revolution of CRISPR, because that was a turning point in technology, not so much AI and robotics, but in biological technology, biotech advance. But in any case, 2014, right around the time of Sandy Hook, I believe, is that all of a sudden we went into this white supremacy is the evil danger. White supremacy doesn't exist. And then people started talking about, the 1619 Project, and people started talking about systemic racism. Well, there isn't systemic race. Maybe in some private companies, that usually family owned, and the family is racist, and that kind of, they don't police racist attitudes in their company. Okay, maybe they're systemic, but not in the United States federal government. United States federal government has taken steps to fight racism and discrimination, all this stuff. It's in the Constitution now. It's part of the law doctrine. There's no systemic racism in the United States federal government, and that was their main charge. Along with that, they said that Trump was the main racist and that all his supporters were white supremacist racists, because that's the way they were fighting the immigration policy. The immigration policy is really economic. Has nothing to do with race. Just because a lot of the people coming in are of different color, that's not what it's about. No one should be able to come in illegally, because when you add to the population, it puts a crunch on housing. Taxpayer-funded schools get inundated with illegal immigrant children. They have to spend more time with these kids because they're undereducated and a lot of times don't speak English. In any case, the main vehicle for pushing this false narrative of white supremacy, and I'm not saying there aren't racists out there, of course there are, but there's not this kind of cohesive groups of white supremacists that are out there. And people say, oh, it's the Proud Boys. The Proud Boys was a Western chauvinist group, right? And Oath Keepers was something else entirely. They were constitutionalists. It had nothing to do with fucking race. You could say the Proud Boys are sexist, but not racist. So I'm going to play... First, let's get back to the story. House panel orders Southern Poverty Law Center to turn over communications with Biden DOJ. This is Zero Hedge, article number 10. Jim Jordan on the House Judiciary Committee gave the Southern Poverty Law Center until April 30th to hand over documents regarding its relationship with the Biden-Harris Department of Justice and the FBI. This is the thing. This is the tip of the iceberg, because it's about to blow this shit wide open. At the SPLC, they're frantically destroying documents as this live stream continues this morning. This is the deal. This is a conspiracy. It's not just one NGO, very rich NGO, deciding to put a racist spin on everything. And this is a concerted effort of the establishment, I'd like to say. You call it the Uniparty or the Democratic Party or whatever, the elite, the globalists, however you want to refer to them. Overall conspiracy of elites wanting to destroy this country or manage its decline and replace it with the New World Order, which is China's ascension, authoritarian, socialist, world government, et cetera, et cetera. Let's get to this story. In a letter to Brian Fair, SPLC interim president and chief executive, Jordan wrote that publicly available documents revealed how the Justice Department partnered closely with the SPLC during the Biden-Harris administration, including scheduling regular meetings, giving the SPLC early access to federal law enforcement data, and allowing SPLC employees to train federal prosecutors, the chair, this is the thing. It's who's wagging who here. You're having the SPLC train federal prosecutors and the FBI, and the FBI and the SPLC working in now who's teaching who to do what? And the FBI is known for doing this. They did this with the Whitmer kidnapping case, and they've done it time and time again, whether it's the first World Trade Center bombing or Oklahoma City bombing, et cetera, et cetera. They create groups which are majority full of informants and agents of the FBI. And then they say, look, here's the crazy white supremacist or conservative terrorist extremist, right-wing extremist that are white and have white supremacist underpinnings, blah, blah, blah. Completely false. Chairman's demand came 2 days after a grand jury in Montgomery, Alabama, returned an 11-count indictment alleging the SPLC had committed wire fraud, made false statements to a federally insured bank, and conspired to conceal money laundering. It's just like they did with Al Capone. I mean, sometimes you can't get them for the real heinous things they're doing, so you use something else. The indictment accuses the SPLC of funneling more than $3 million between 2014 and 2023 to no fewer than 8 paid informants and violent racist organizations, including the Ku Klux Klan, United Klans of America, National Socialist Movement, National Socialist Party of America, the American Front, the Aryan Nations, Aligned Sadistic Souls Motorcycle Club. It's like stuff we already knew. And I'm not going to argue it. I'm actually going to let Greg Gutfeld argue it with Jessica Tarlov, who is really stupid, not because she's not learned, but she doesn't give any attention to the nefarious machinations of conspirators who are linking groups together to push forward false narratives to serve an overall agenda, etc. New York Post, SPLC's high-profile donors like Clooney, Soros stay mum after a nonprofit indicted over alleged $3 million hate group informant scheme. Big-name donors, including George Clooney and George Soros, have stayed silent amid the allegations. SPLC was charged with wire fraud. The foundations of Clooney and Soros, along with MGM Resorts, haven't spoken out. Former Apple CEO Tim Cook, JP Morgan, pledged the organization after clashes at the 2017 Unite the Right, which was staged white supremacist rally in Virginia that resulted in the death of the protester. It wasn't a white supremacist rally. What it was it was made up to be a white supremacist rally by organizations like the SPLC. What it was a rally to save a fucking statue. And when the leftists learned that there were going to be people there preventing them from tearing down the statue, the left turned out in big numbers, and you had this clash. And don't forget that the police of Charlottesville, with help of the FBI, funneled the groups into each other. Didn't try to keep them apart, funneled them into each other, which caused the kerfuffle. And then one person was killed when, strangely, a black car with windows tinted out so you couldn't see the driver crashed into a crowd of leftist protesters, killing 1 person because you had to have a death of a leftist. We don't even know if the guy that was prosecuted for that was even driving the car. We couldn't see him. And the car appeared to perform like it was remote controlled. That's just my wrinkle. Other notable donors to the SPLC include Soros Open Society Foundation, OpenAI, and Chick-fil-A. Going to PJ Media now, story number 12. Greg Gutfeld savages the SPLC and the Democrats who took the bait. Gutfeld began by playing a montage of Joe Biden clips hammering the same line about the infamous Charlottesville hoax. The Donald Trump called neo-Nazis very fine people. Biden ran that narrative into the ground. He even built his 2020 campaign around it. And he said it over and over again, even in the last election when it was proven that the very fine people on both sides, that was a hoax itself, because if you ever heard the complete quote from Donald Trump, he said, except for the neo-Nazis, and he condemned them. He said you had very fine people on both sides. Why? Because they were arguing about whether a statue should stay in a town park. But now the SPLC, long treated by the media as the gold standard on American hate groups, has been indicted by a grand jury for allegedly funding millions of dollars to donor funds directly to extremist groups. Not to dismantle them, but to help them perpetrate more racism. And you have to understand, because there was no racism, and there's not this whole thing, hate and hate speech, and they were trying to make it seem like America was a country of haters, people that hated each other. And for a long time, until this kind of bullshit began, for most of the American citizens here, we're all Americans. We all have individual rights, and my rights end where your rights begin, and round we go. And so you want to live in peace, and you don't want to get in a confrontation with your neighbor or the guy at the store or whatever. People just want to make their way. They just want to go about their business and live their lives. They don't need more problems. They got enough problems. So no one's out there like fostering. The only thing you see, the tangible evidence of this, is the Patriot Front. And the Patriot Front are very likely sheep dip or FBI astroturfing activities. That's what it seems like. Or maybe if you go in the backwoods of some rural areas, Idaho, which is suspect, you might find, groupings of these races, but they don't have any political power because they don't have the numbers. So it's a moot point. But the SPLC and the ADL are trying to convince you that all MAGA people, all Trump supporters, and they did this successfully, are racist white supremacists. PJ Media, again, Southern Poverty Law Center story sends the legacy media into a schizophrenic fit. And then it has the charge there. It was to pay the operative to help advance the cause of the targeted hate groups through certain actions and even under certain direction from the SPLC. Right. So the informants weren't paid to inform, to help them dismantle the groups. They were, as we saw with the FBI and the Whitmer kidnapping, you're trying to convince people to do more hate. And before we get into this thing with Jessica Tarlov, I want to put out, she puts out a couple things like the shooting at Walmart in Texas and the shooting in the parking lot of a supermarket in Buffalo, New York. The one in Buffalo, New York, the shooter had an ex-FBI handler that he was communicating with online. All right, so this goes well beyond the SPLC. This is everywhere, that people are being mind controlled, for lack of a better term, convinced, manipulated into doing certain things, taking certain actions because XYZ. Tyler Robinson, the ICE shooters, the litany is just, it would take me too long to list it here. But going back to the story, why would the SPLC do such a thing? Well, after the Unite the Right rally in 2017, the SPLC saw an increase to its own funding to the tune of $80 million. So it could be greed. It's not greed. They need the money to forward the false narratives. So it's not like the people working for the SPLC are getting rich. It's about having a war chest for culture war. And what did the advisor to Hillary Clinton say when she was losing in the polls to Donald Trump? They said, you have to increase the culture war. So that was their thing. And that would remember pushing the 1619 Project. And now their thing is you got to use profanity. Because the racist thing just didn't last very long. You know, they tried to pin it on George Floyd was another racist thing. It's all racism, it was white supremacy. Which is not, you know, the guy died of a drug overdose while in police custody, which happens all the time. And he was resisting arrest. So he got his skull thumped. And that restraint on George Floyd was a legal Minnesota police restraint. Knee on the neck. You're not allowed to, you can't put the knee on the throat, but you can put your knee on the back of the neck. All right, Real Clear Politics. Schumer defends SPLC. Trump DOJ is sending the message, if you fight white supremacy, you're next. That's not what he's saying. He is doubling down on the narrative. Chuck, there is no white supremacy worth talking about, right? They don't have any political power because there aren't these large numbers of white supremacists. There just aren't. Sorry. I've never seen it. I traveled all over the country. I don't see. Are there racists? Sure. Are there bigots, you know, one way or another? Sure. You know, people don't like the other. You know, if you're a little or maybe xenophobic, if the person doesn't look like you don't understand their culture or their dress or, you know, don't like their skin color. You know, if you were raised by a racist, you could be a racist. But it's not a political issue. So why are politicians talking about white supremacy? They act like, you know, there are millions, tens of millions of white supremacists who are going to reinstitute a Christian nationalism or something. It's just ridiculous. So he doubles down in the narrative that this stuff exists. If you fight white supremacy, you're next. He's trying to make it like they're the good people fighting white supremacy. You made it up, you fuck. And then let's get to the screaming match. PJ Media, this is a screaming match between Greg Gutfeld and Jessica Tarlov on the 5 was brutal. Absolutely, Gutfeld absolutely destroyed Jessica Tarlov on the 5. And I'm not going to get any further into it. I think I'm just going to play it for you.
That's the argument.
Synagogue.
It's true somewhere. Whenever there's a hate crime hoax, Jessica, and it's
what
exposed,
hate crime hoax?
The liberal goes, Justice Smollett, anyone?
No, I didn't
how about
say
the banana peel on the bench?
Yeah,
how about the
Walmart
noose
shooter
at the
is
racetrack?
a banana peel. What hoax have you actually seen here? You don't think that hundreds of people showed up at the Unite the Right rally that weren't this informant, that weren't persuaded by his vehicle that got them there?
Who was the informant?
I don't. What?
You don't know. Was it the leader? An informant is not a leader.
Do you think
it's also? I mean,
that's the white supremacists there? That it's not real?
I don't know. I wasn't there.
Are you?
All I know is I never heard of it until the day that it happened. You act like you can take the word for a bunch of corrupt people.
Proud Boys.
So you're saying this wasn't created. You're saying this just was an organic event, just like every left-wing event. It just happened. All these right-wingers showed up. Nobody else knew about it. And you know what?
People are real.
Nobody.
The white supremacists are
You know
real,
what?
who got the call to action.
Let me do the simplest analogy. This is like when somebody says, on average, men are taller and way more than women. And then one woman goes, but what about her? And they point to a WNBA player. Yes, Jessica, I'll give you. There probably is a bigot somewhere. But you guys created a false flag that there was this immense movement going on in this country that then put targets on people like Charlie Kirk's back, and he's dead. And a lot of other people were either threatened, physically attacked because of a false flag, which painted an entire, basically, millions of people as white supremacists. You guys ran with it. Imagine if Trump had not won and Kamala Harris had won. Imagine where the SPLC would be now. Imagine how torn apart this country would be. And by the way, I hope that this thing mends, but I don't know, because there are people like you, Jessica, who have such a sunk cost in this belief that this is a belief you were tricked into believing, to think that there's all these racists hiding behind every Cracker Barrel. No, you know what the racists were? They were the anti-racist black activists who saw this as a way to go after whites. This racism that you created was designed to allow for a different kind of racism. And I go back to the contrast. We don't have to defend our racists because we don't know who they are, because you create them. Meanwhile, we don't have to make up your racist because you're standing there with Hassan Piker. These guys are right there in our face.
Yeah.
The comparison,
Hold on, I gotta get.
Can you say the victims that they don't exist or whatever?
Yeah.
The 23 people who died in the Walmart in El Paso, going to Buffalo, going to the Tree of Life Synagogue, those were all
That is not part that is not part of the psyop or the false flag. Of course, you're violating the exception to the rule fallacy.
I'm not.
Yes,
Jesse said everything is fine. We all love each other.
You know what he was doing.
I
Say we
gotta
love
get
each
Emily
other
in.
more than you guys make it out today.
I've got to get
I want
Emily.
the country to be torn asunder, not you, your party, because that keeps you in power. If there's no more homelessness, there's no more homelessness money.
Yep, exactly. And that's what I wanted to say, is that it doesn't start and stop with the SPLC. They are false flags, people either driven wittingly or unwittingly to commit crime in the name of racism. And the perfect example was the Buffalo shooter who was communicating with an ex-FBI official agent before the shooting. And if you look at a majority of these shootings, whether it's Tyler Robinson or anybody else, they're communicating with people online that they believe are like-minded friends, associates, etc. You don't know who people on the other end of the internet are. They could very well be agents of the state. So anybody who's ex-FBI or ex-military is suspect. Easily sheep dip. Oh, I was just trying to talk him out of it. Well, it sounded like you were trying to talk him into it. So let's get back to the headlines. Yeah, I'm not going to go. You heard the interaction between those two. I'm not going to go into quoting Jessica Tarloff, certainly. And in the midst of this, post-millennial, story number 16, SPLC omitted over 2,000 reports of anti-white hate crimes. 2016 report had asked educators whether they agreed with the statement, "I have heard derogatory language or slurs about white students." 20% said they had. And that's what I'm talking about. And I didn't mean to be racist against the black community. I have black friends. I love everyone. All lives matter, black lives or any lives. But that's not the point. Is when I was out in the community, the palpable hate of groups, I would say whites, by the black community, by some in the black community, I'm not tarnishing everything, that's a generalization. Was there really people out there that just hate other people because they're white? Now, are there people out there that probably feel the same way about black people? Maybe, but the palpable anger, resentment, and real hatred, like seething, like I feared for my physical safety, that was unnerving, certainly. And I'm not saying that doesn't happen with the black community too. I'm sure it does. I want, you want to be fair, but in all my years as a journalist or as a traveler, I haven't encountered that sort of a feeling from others. There have been hate towards me as a journalist. That was particularly after the death of Princess Diana. For some reason, people were blaming me as a journalist because, whatever, because of paparazzi, maybe it had something to do with her death. But, You know, when you're out somewhere and you have a bunch of people seething and you seem to be a target of their ire, it's fucking scary. PJ Media again, what do no kings, Jussie Smollett and the Southern Poverty Law Center have in common? Well, you know, it's all false flag bullshit. The SPLC was manufacturing the very extremism it was claiming to be fighting, paying sources to stoke racial hatred while publicly denouncing the same groups on its website. Open Society Foundation also announced a broader $10 million initiative to confront hate crimes that don't really exist. Jussie Smollett, evidently there wasn't enough real racism around, so he felt required to create a straw man, rather like No Kings, which protests a king we don't have, and the SPLC funding Unite the Right. Here too is a pattern worth noting. In each case, fakery is used to support their public positions and source money is used to pay for that fakery. And in all cases, the legacy media gobble it up and send it to us under the guise of news. Of course, the Unite the Right, all those douchebags with torches, that was all fake. All those people were paid. And we know the leftists have paid not only protesters and fakers of all this kind of nonsense. It doesn't hold up. You look at all this hate crime, and it turns out, if it's something anti-Semitic, turns out there was some Jewish guy who did it, or somebody, or something that's anti-black. There was a black person that was drawing, put a sign, a KKK sign in their own yard, or burning a cross or whatever. Happens time and time again. And that's what Jussie Smollett had to do with this whole thing. And it was rampant. You know, it got to this crescendo that was really disturbing. And now we know what we suspected all along is that it was all manufactured reality. It's not reality, manufactured reality as far as the mainstream news is concerned. Federalist, story number 18, blatantly dishonest language on Virginia ballots fits long pattern of Democratic word abuse. The Democrat word abuse, a judge blasted the Dems' flowery ballot language as flagrantly misleading, failing to accurately describe the proposed amendment. Indeed. If you don't know, Philip K. Dick is a futurist, understood the power of words like few others. The American science fiction novelist once opined, the basic tool for the manipulation of reality is the manipulation of words. If you can control the meaning of words, you can control the people who use the words, just like phrases like white supremacy. It had a palatable feeling to it. It probably, you know, especially the black community, people of color, probably, you know, was very unnerving for them to hear those words. And if they're being told these words are being mouthed by the President of the United States, why wouldn't you believe it to be real? The President of the United States wouldn't lie about something like that. Of course, Marxists have been manipulating words for a long time. Their spirit guide, the 20th century radical Saul Alinsky, gave the left its marching orders in his 1971 Communist Manifesto, Rules for Radicals. Alinsky advised, he who controls the language controls the masses. Indeed. And you know what a lot of this has to do with? It just has to do with mind control. And I say mind control because there are a lot of different things factored in now than just simple manipulation or nudging. Because you have people that are mentally ill, driven mentally ill by a few different vectors, but also people that are medicated that make them more susceptible to manipulation. Really, it's mind control. And then you have things like psychic driving, which is just the repetition of things that may be false, and then you get those people to believe those things, and then they go out and do it wittingly or unwittingly. Should the Constitution of Virginia be amended to allow General Assembly to temporarily adopt new congressional districts to restore fairness in the upcoming elections, while ensuring Virginia's standard redistricting process resumes for all the future redistricting after the 2030 census? Oh, they didn't have where is it? Oh, it's at the bottom there. What? Oh, restoring fairness. Oh, they're restoring fairness. They're not. They're the ones being unfair. and I hate to be this partisan, but the Republicans are one that are trying to restore fairness. You see the way the supermajority idea works within states. The Democrats get in, they marginalize the Republican Party, and then they put in rules to keep themselves perpetually in power. That's not fair. That's not fairness. Supermajorities aren't fairness. It's like you climb up the ladder and you pull the ladder up behind you. That's not fair. And then we'll get to more of the lie here with more PJ Media, story number 19, Lenin's professional revolutionaries and the Democrats' professional rioters. What you have to understand about this story is that it's all fake. It's all astroturfed. It's all bullshit. Like Jessica Tarlov was saying, it was like, Jesse Waters said that we all love each other. That might be an exaggeration, but we all are tolerating each other because everybody doesn't want to necessarily get along Rodney King style, but everybody just wants to make their way, and they don't want to have any problems with their neighbors or the community or people. And it's what I have found. It's people with a chip on their shoulder, the people in the black community with a chip on their shoulder feel that more needs to be done for them. Okay, I get it. But it's not my fault. It's like just because I drive a gasoline car doesn't make me an evil person, right? I'm not. Sure. Do you need more access or more funding in the Department of Education, or you're on the school board and you're making a point about something? I get it. Okay, but I'm not the problem. I'm just trying to make my way. I'm not fucking racist. I was multiculti before anybody was multiculti, before it was even a thing. I don't have a problem with people's origin or their skin color or even their politics or their religion. I only have a problem with people that have a problem with me just doing my thing. Balance. I have everything. It's my Buddhist philosophy, everything in balance. And if you're out of balance, you'll know about it because the world is going to push back against your imbalance. Fox News, once Trump-aligned podcasts are warning he's losing his coalition over broken promises. Joe Rogan says voters feel betrayed over the Iran war. Many of the same podcasters credited with delivering President Donald Trump his 2024 victory, from Joe Rogan to Theo Vaughn, are warning that broken campaign promises may have a devastating consequences. It's the Iran war, right? Because he said no forever wars. But he was clearly consistent about Iran not having a nuclear weapon. So is it really a broken promise? People didn't want an Iran war. We've been hearing it from Lindsey Graham and John McCain for years. I mean, he gave in. Did he give in? Maybe. My whole thing on this for a long time is you don't know the intelligence. It seems like the intelligence was saying it's now or never. Because if these Chinese missiles get to Iran, you're not going to be able to get your carrier groups close enough to use them in an attack, which also limits your use of other vehicles, helicopters, etc. Submersibles, whatever. Just the News, Trump confirms new deal with pharmaceutical company Regeneron to lower drug prices. Whoops. So Trump is still doing good things. And if you look at it overall, at the Iran war as one policy decision, you got to keep it in context of all the other policy decisions. So he's lowering drug prices for people that take drugs. I think that's good. Because the issue was the pharmaceutical companies were charging Americans more than any other country. Just the News, Trump demands Schumer apologize for remarks on ICE Border Patrol. So what did Chuck Schumer said? Chuck Schumer said, what did Chuck Schumer say? Chuck Schumer said, no one respects ICE and Border Patrol. No one. And this is about the funding. The Republicans have figured out a way to end the shutdown and fund ICE and DHS. And Schumer comes out and he goes, no one respects ICE and Border Patrol. I do. Law enforcement is a hard job. And especially, again, going back to this false narrative shit, is that the Democrats are perpetuating this lie that somehow ICE is performing, their duties are illicit or the way they're conducting their operations are illicit. It's not true. It's not true at all. You are fomenting hate against law enforcement in the United States. Law enforcement that is paid by our tax dollars, that have a job to do, that is within the law. That's the law, is that if you're here illegally, you're deported. There's no hearing, there's no nothing. And if you're here illegally, you don't need an arrest warrant for that person. And arrest warrants and search warrants are two different things. That, again, the Democrats try to conflate all that shit. Fox News story number 23, ICE nabs illegal aliens convicted of child sex crimes and meth trafficking in nationwide enforcement sweep. The DHS says it's fighting for the justice of victims of illegal alien crime during National Crime Victims Week. Story goes on to say one man, Carlos Portilla Nunez of El Salvador, was previously convicted of lewd and lascivious acts with a child in Indio, California. Pablo Branco Fortuna, an illegal alien from Mexico, was convicted of aggravated assault and failing to register as a sex offender in Hidalgo, Texas. And Robert Vejeo Benitez, also from Mexico, was convicted of assault by strangulation in Wake County, North Carolina. Serious criminals. Now, as I said previously, and the Democrats again, false narrative, it's not just criminal activity in this country, it's criminal activity in their country of origin. Story number 24, just the news, Trump push to restrain birthright citizenship gets ammo from unlikely source, a liberal polling group. Pew Research Center found 9% of births in the U.S. in 2023 were to illegal immigrants. And when most people hear that, they don't agree. And if you take a closer look, found that roughly 245,000 of those babies had fathers who were also not citizens or lawful permanent residents. The trend in births to illegal migrants has also followed the growth and decline of the illegal migrant population, with more children born in the U.S. to illegal migrants during the Biden administration than any other administration. Go figure. In most countries, citizenship is determined by the citizenship of the parents, meaning that most of the countries in the study confer citizenship to children born in the country if one or both parents are citizens of that country. As it should be, because the reason is that it's being exploited. If it wasn't being exploited, I wouldn't give a shit. But you have a birthing industry, birthright citizenship industry, particularly with Chinese, which is of great concern. And then you have this statistic of illegal immigrants birthing children while they're in country, and that automatically makes them a citizen, which is, and then could ensure the stay of the parents as well. Another reason you don't want illegal immigrants in the country, TJ Media, story number 25, Mexican national convicted of voter fraud in the U.S. Mexican alien received a conviction for repeatedly and legally voting in U.S. elections. Jose Ceballos has been through the United States justice system before, as he has a 1995 conviction of battery. Apparently, that did not result in his deportation, and he voted illegally in our elections multiple times over the years. But now, this alien has been convicted of illegally voting in American elections. But it doesn't happen. Of course it does. It's ridiculous. That's like Maggie Brennan on Face the Nation. It's against federal law to vote in federal elections if you're not a legal resident. And why do laws stop people? It's like gun laws. Gun laws never stop criminals. They only stop law abiders from getting firearms to protect themselves against the criminals who have illegal guns most of the time. Fox News California basic income experiment fails to provide financial independence. Of course it's not. Participants reported that while cash helped cover bills and pay down debt, it did not provide a cushion for unexpected expenses. As it shouldn't, and of course it's not going to foster economic independence because you need your own money for that and you need to work for your money. California Guaranteed Income Pilot Program intended to lift families out of poverty failed to lead to participants' long-term financial independence. No strings attached cash. Significant majority of the participants, the program was not enough to break the cycle of poverty. Work, because work establishes something in the human psyche that you go forth and do things productive in your life and you're rewarded financially. And then that spurs in you, oh, well, I will be more productive and then I will get more money. And then you figure out ways to become even more productive or little life hacks that you can double your productivity in something. If you sit in front of the TV all day or whatever on your phone all day and just collect a check, you never learn that. And that's what it means. If you're able-bodied to go out every day and either work for somebody else or start your own business. But that, you have to understand that being productive and starting a business, although you're not getting paid right away, might very well result in you getting, building some wealth. Back to California, PJ Media, Dems flunk homelessness test in California gubernatorial debate. He spent anywhere from $24 billion to $37 billion on solving homelessness. That's at least $170,000 per homeless person in California. And the state has gained 30,000 more homeless people. Well, if you're getting $170,000, bringing the total population to 187,000, a 24% increase since 2019. And gubernatorial candidate and former Representative Katie Porter, who gives Newsom an A for overall job performance, gave him a solid B on the issue of homelessness, even though she called herself a notoriously tough grader. Newsom sucks. And this is the thing is, you want a problem so you can secure funding and then you skim the funding, but you never want to get rid of the problem. You want the problem to stay, whether it's SPLC or California homelessness. And what happened? The homelessness increased. Good. So now they need even more money that they are going to skim off of. And how does that work? Well, you'll tell all your friends, well, this budget has been approved, and all your friends tend to get into homelessness assistance NGOs. And they get money. And whether that help is delivered or not with that money, as you see in Minneapolis and in California, the hospice program, they just set up businesses, they take the money in, shell companies really, take the money in to provide no service. And that's why you had billions of dollars, tens of billions of dollars allocated to fight homelessness, and they go to groups that claim they're fighting homelessness. And what happens? The homelessness problem gets worse. Fox News, story number 28, Dem gubernatorial hopefuls ripped for playing garbage race card over crackdown on truckers' English. The Trump administration withheld $40 million from California over failure to meet English proficiency standards when issuing CDLs, commercial driver's licenses. If you can't read street signs, I mean, come on. And you'll have to talk to way station inspectors and other law enforcement when you get pulled over. Democratic Party candidates for California governor said they would fight the Trump administration's push to get California police officers to begin issuing English proficiency tests to big rig drivers in the state because it's racist. It's white supremacist. That's not true. You have to, especially you have to be able to read English. And if you're not familiar with miles, you're on the metric system or whatever, you have to be proficient there as well. The warnings and fear expressed by implementing stricter regulations to ensure anyone with a commercial's driver's license can understand American road signs came from the Democrats during the first California gubernatorial debate, since Eric Swalwell was forced to jump out of the race amid sexual misconduct allegations. Again, fake. Fake, fake, fake. Whether it's the liberal media or the Democratic Party or anything, it's all fake. It's a war on reality. It's Jussie Smollett or it's Eric Swalwell. Now, maybe he was a womanizer, but for these people to come out 10, 20 years later, it's just ridiculous. And the same thing happened to Fairfax in Virginia. You have consensual sex with somebody, with an agent, a honeypot agent, and then 10 years down the road, whatever, they come out and they go, actually, he raped me. Long after any evidence that would suggest such things is gone. And same thing with what's-her-face did with Donald Trump. And that wasn't even a rape case. That was a smear. Supposedly accused Donald Trump of smearing this author, which was based on the fact that he called her crazy because she kept saying that he raped her in a dressing room at a department store. Now, two things. I don't think Trump would have to rape anybody. And if you're in a dressing room with a woman, or a woman lets you in a dressing room and pull down your pants or whatever, and then you don't say anything about it for another 20, 30 years, I mean, it's ridiculous. Different story here. Article 29, Defense Department scientist accidental death raises questions as probe into missing scientists grow. So Jude Height's 2022 death was described. So apparently, Jude Height, a longtime Army biochemist whose work placed him with the type of high-level research now under federal review, in 2022, his vehicle rolled backward down a driveway at a home in Chester County, Pennsylvania, striking and trapping him beneath. It was ruled an accident. Could be. Or maybe he shot himself in the head twice. I mean, there's a lot of this going on. There is a rampant assassination all over the world, but in this country as well. And people disappear. That doesn't mean they've been assassinated, but it looks like, because they don't bring their phones with them when they leave their house, so it looks like they are involved in either espionage or top secret meetings, and when they go to this top secret meeting, they are kidnapped or killed. Hard to say. Other big news here, Washington Times, Trump administration vows crackdown on Chinese companies exploiting AI models made in the U.S. Of course they are. The Trump administration is vowing to crack down on foreign tech companies' exploitation of U.S. artificial intelligence models, singling out China at a time where the country is narrowing the gap with the U.S. in the AI race. Of course, foreign entities, principally based in China, of engaging in deliberate industrial-scale campaigns to distill or extract capabilities from leading AI systems made in the U.S. and exploiting American expertise and innovation. And some of it is shared. Of course, as I said, we're replete with communist espionage, Chinese communist espionage in this country, all over. Doesn't matter where it is, politics, corporate, all the way down to little municipalities. It's everywhere. Biolabs. It's everywhere. And some people are helping the Chinese because they want the Chinese to win. And that's part of the whole thing that we're exposing here is SPLC, is America is racist, so let's cheer on the ascension of the Chinese communists. Just the News adds to the story. Trump administration accuses Chinese actors of stealing U.S. artificial intelligence systems. The Chinese actors are waging industrial-scale efforts to steal artificial intelligence systems for the U.S. You think? Of course they are. In a memo to the head of agencies and executive branch departments, Michael Cratios, technology advisor to President Trump, said the foreign entities based primarily in China are engaged in campaigns to systematically extract capabilities from American AI models. And you know why the Chinese government does this is because, hey, you have to understand, they're like, it's not the Chinese government. It's not the People's Liberation Army. It's the companies that are based in China, which are majority owned by the state Communist China. Of course they're stealing. And in some instances, they're aided in their stealing and their espionage by Americans, which I think should be hung. Billy Corrigan from Smashing Pumpkins fame chimes in on AI. Post Millennial has the story. Billy Corrigan says AI is a demon, refuses to use it. I patently refuse to use AI in my music creation because to me it's a deal with the devil, plain and simple. It is. And it is going to be the Antichrist. You'll see. Also from the post-millennial, major media group McClatchy urges journalists to use AI to write articles. The Claude-powered AI tool is billed as a content scaling agent, meaning that editors can take stories written by journalists and have the CSA rewrite them to be shorter or a more specific audience. This was already happening when I was still in journalism, using AI to write briefs and stories and so forth. But now editors using it to rewrite. How good would that feel if you were a writer? To have the editor give your story to AI to have it rewritten. Maybe with a certain bias that the SPLC might agree with. Content scaling agent, that's the new term now. Which helps, it's supposed to help reporters churn out more stories, but, you know, soon enough, you won't have any. You won't have any reporters anymore. New York Times, companies, not consumers, to cash in big from tariff refunds. Many families felt the sting of the president's now illegal tariffs, but companies have said little about whether they will share the $166 billion coming back to them. It's mostly to China, you dumbasses. Companies based in China, they're majority owned by the Chinese Communist Party. That rules China. Oh, it's a really good. Thanks, Supreme Court, giving $166 billion back to China. And I told you, and the New York Times is not saying this, that many families felt the sting of president's now illegal tariffs. No, they didn't. Because A, China was picking up the tariff, or the Chinese aligned companies that were importing from China were picking up the tariff. Major corporations weren't passing it on to consumers. You could see it in the price index. They were trying to associate Biden's ongoing inflation hangover with Trump's tariffs. Didn't have anything to do with it. And of course, the consumers are going to get the rebates, and they're not going to rebate. Companies don't rebate their customers. Come on. Do you know that sales tax is not the responsibility of the consumer? It's the responsibility of the seller, and they just pass it on to you. It's legal practice, but it's not your responsibility. The company is just passing off the tax that they're responsible for, sales tax, to you. Daily Mail, doomsday for Nike as it axes 1,400 jobs after brutal sales drop caused by woke push. Maybe. Again, it's AI. And then you can see it from TechCrunch also. Microsoft offers buyout to up to 7% of its U.S. employees. What's the excuse there? There's no excuse. It's AI. And the job apocalypse will continue. I mean, they're even outwardly admitting it now, but they still hide behind, oh, it's just cost cutting. Business Insider, Meta is laying off 10% of its entire staff next month. Wow. Wow. And people like Zuckerberg, this is New York Times, article number 37, the rich and powerful want to live forever. What if they could? From the Kremlin to Silicon Valley, some of the most powerful people in the world now want something more, eternal life. And they've been preaching this for many, many years. Even Genghis Khan wanted to live. He was actually drinking mercury because he thought it would make him live forever, and it killed him. Many people want to live forever, and they possibly can. And that's their goal. If you have all the money, in the world, you could live the longest, certainly. But they're talking about eternal life, and what they're talking about here is, and they didn't get into in the article, it's more along the lines of growing specific human clones for organ replacement for you. And the big part is maintaining healthy cells and a healthy brain, because they haven't figured out a way to give you a new brain and still have your consciousness and whatever. But all your other organs that could fail, your heart, your liver, your kidneys, etc. Last article up here is from Zero Hedge. 4 in 10 American teens are almost constantly online. The U.S. jury recently found Meta and YouTube liable in a landmark social media addiction trial, marking a major legal setback for the tech giants. Mostly Meta, and I found that, because I don't really use social media for much, I used to use Twitter quite a bit for news. I'd subscribe to news sites who would tweet, and then I would take it straight from the news site. But I don't do that anymore because it doesn't work as well. So I get alerts directly from the news sites. Well, whatever. But I found that Instagram, it got to know what I liked really fast and started feeding me all these things. And I found myself scrolling like a crazy person. But it's the same thing with video games. I used to play video games incessantly for a while. I got hooked on those hours per day. And it's the same thing. I don't want to spend hours of my day with my face in my phone or on the computer scrolling through, 2-minute videos on Instagram. Even though I might like the content, I might find it interesting, the whole thing is not good for you. Also, it wears on your attention span. These patterns point to clear differences in engagement across platforms, with video-based apps standing out for their particularly intensiveness. Yeah. And people like videos too. That's why I try to convince people to read. You retain much more from reading. And also reading stimulates your brain way, way, way more than videos can ever do. And I'm not saying that there aren't places for video, but I think if you need to digest something and have it stick, you're better off reading it. All right, that's it for me. Thanks for joining me today.
Go ahead.
Don't forget to engage the channel, like, subscribe, leave a comment. Remember, you're under attack psychologically, biologically, so stay hip to the trick. Have a great weekend. And I'll see you next week. I'm trying to make some changes here to the podcast. Nothing too drastic, but blather on more about, or less, I should say, about my personal opinion and more news. All right, thanks for joining me today. Appreciate you. See you next week. Respect.
These people are crazy. You can't handle the truth.
The New World Order